We have been decimated with injuries in week 6 for the fantasy football season. Christian McCaffrey, Justin Fields, David Montgomery, Trevor Lawrence, Deebo Samuels, Jimmy G, Kyron Williams, Ryan Tannehill. All of these guys were injured in week 6. Some of the key players for your fantasy football team. Now going into week 7, I have the privilege and honor to bring you a top 10 waiver wire priorities that you should be going and picking up in week 7. I'm going to be trying to bring you as many players, over 22 waiver wire priorities that you should be picking up coming into week 7 of the fantasy football season. Before we even get into that, we do have 6 teams that are on a bye week, which also really decimates your team if you are struggling with injuries already. The Panthers, the Bengals, the Cowboys, the Texans, the Jets, and the Titans. Adam Thielen, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, and Derrick Henry. The list goes on of so many people that you're going to have on a bye week, and so many people that are probably going to be injured in week 7 of the fantasy football season. So good luck, and I'm going to be bringing you some names right now that should already be rostered in your leagues. And if not, please go make sure these guys are a priority for you to pick them up, because they can become useful as we are struggling with injuries this year in fantasy football. Jameson Williams, who just had a great big game this past week, caught 2 out of 3 targets and a touchdown. That bomb touchdown, he is the field stretcher, over 13 fantasy points. That's exactly what we're kind of expecting from Jameson Williams. And not only that, is going to continue to build up week in and week out. Quentin Johnson, who, as I'm recording this, hasn't played. Josh Palmer is questionable. If he doesn't play, he could have a big week. Josh Reynolds still struggling with injuries in the backfield. Now that David Montgomery is out, or injured, not out, injured, maybe we can see a bigger role in the passing game for this Lions offense. Rashee Rice, who also just had a great game on Thursday Night Football, caught 4 out of 4, over 11 targets on Thursday night against the Broncos. He looks like he's becoming Patrick Mahomes' favorite wide receiver. Tajay Spears also building his chemistry as well. Now that this offense is going to change potentially without Ryan Tannehill, they might have to result in checking the ball down significantly more with Tajay Spears. Had over 7 fantasy points. Once again, not exciting, but someone that should already be rostered, who was essentially splitting time with Derrick Henry already. And then Kendrick Miller, who didn't have the best week this week, but we saw the type of things he can do in the air the week prior. So those are the guys that should be rostered already going into week 7. And I'm going to go straight into my first waiver wire priority. All right, before I even get into my first waiver wire priority, one thing I want to say is that I'm going to be bringing you a group of running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends that I believe that should be prioritized coming into week 7. Now, even though they are numbered in my priority, I think every single one really depends on how your team is built and what you really need coming into that week in week 7, because you can have a completely different roster construction than I do, and you may need to prioritize somebody that you need at least for 1 week, or somebody that can be needed for you multiple weeks down the road. Okay, so going into my first waiver wire priority, I think it is the biggest one coming into this week. It's actually 2 running backs on the same team. That is Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason. Now, obviously, the biggest caveat here is that Christian McCaffrey did exit the game with a oblique injury, and also now coming up as a rib injury. A good thing about this injury for Christian McCaffrey, if you're a Christian McCaffrey owners, is that he is going to be playing on Monday night against the Vikings. So he does have a little bit of extra time to heal. But at the same time, this team can do so much without Christian McCaffrey, in the backfield. That's why I do believe he may miss this time because of how much of workload he has been carrying. Now, the bigger question is, who should you be picking up? Now, when you look at the snap count, as you can probably see on your screen already, Jordan Mason and Elijah Mitchell, the snaps that surprisingly is in favor in Jordan Mason. 15 snaps, 9 routes run, and 5 carries. Now, Elijah Mitchell having 7 snaps, 5 route runs, and 2 carries. That is the big significant difference here. Now, who is going to be the main starter coming into this week? I don't know. But what I can see when I watch that video is that Jordan Mason looks like the more explosive running back, and someone that I think really fits into this Christian McCaffrey role, right? Elijah Mitchell is more of a run down in between the tackles type of runner. He's a bulldozer, where Christian McCaffrey is more shifty, more breaking a tackle type of guy, which kind of makes sense with Jordan Mason. You think of Jordan Mason 5'11", 223 pounds. I do believe eerily similar to Christian McCaffrey at 5'11" and 205 pounds. Not saying that Elijah Mitchell doesn't. Oddly enough, he's also 5'11", 200 pounds, but the way he runs is significantly different than Jordan Mason, which I believe suits this offense a little bit better. Not only that, Deebo Samuel is also potentially going to miss some time, which means they need to get both of these guys rolling in the run game, which means this could be a 50-50 split, which means that you might even have to pick up both of them and hope by the time the news comes out throughout the week, we know who is the right person to pick up. By that time, we wouldn't know. We won't know the answer, and we hope that we can only do is pick up the right person. Hopefully that makes sense. If I was in this position, the way that I watch these games, the way that I saw somebody relieving Christian McCaffrey and who looks like the most explosive player in this backfield, it would be Jordan Mason for me. Both of these guys are available in significant amount of leagues. Elijah Mitchell, 74% of ESPN and 66% of Sleeper, where Jordan Mason is available in significantly more in both ESPN and Sleeper, over 90% of both ESPN and Sleeper leagues. So if you need a running back coming into week 7, which I do believe in my opinion, once again, I don't know the severity of the injury and if he's going to miss a significant amount of time. I do believe he misses a game or two, which means Jordan Mason and Elijah Mitchell are both going to be fantasy relevant at least for 1 week. All right, going into my second waiver wire priority, another group of running backs here at the Arizona backfield, Keontae Ingram and, oddly enough, Damian Williams. Now, I am not saying that you should be going up and picking up Damian. I am saying he should be on your radar. I just wanted to bring his name up so you guys understand where I'm going to be coming from, okay? Because last week we told you to pick up Amari DeMarcado, and look what he did this week. Absolutely nothing. We all thought that he was going to be part of this offense. He only sees 3 touches in this game, which was pretty frustrating because I did start him in multiple leagues. Even though I knew Keontae Ingram was going to start, I was hoping with all my injuries that he was going to be some part of the offense, but it wasn't him. It was more Damian Williams, who once again wasn't a massive factor. He only had 9 touches in the total game, scoring over 5 fantasy points. But the interesting thing are the snap counts, okay? It's not the whole thing, and you can probably see the graphic on your screen. Let's start with DeMarcado, 33 snaps, 27 routes to run, 1 target, and 2 carries. No carries on the ground. I mean, he only saw 1 target in the air. All these running backs didn't see targets at all. Keontae Ingram, 28 snaps, 11 routes run, 2 targets, and 10 carries. He led this backfield in carries, which I guess that's exactly what you need and would hope for this offense. It's not exciting, it's not sexy, but once again, something that I would rather have. What are the opportunities that they are getting? And then Damian Williams, 13 snap counts, 3 routes run, 1 target, and 8 carries. The second in carries on this team. I found this really interesting on why they would do this. But look, they have a better matchup coming into this week. The Seattle Seahawks, who do give up a good amount of points to the running back position, which I do believe they could, another divisional game for this Arizona Cardinals team. Maybe you can see Keontae Ingram or Damian Williams really getting the opportunities coming into week 2. Once again, I do believe Keontae Ingram will lead this backfield, but just in case, if Keontae Ingram is already picked up in your league, maybe Damian Williams could be a flyer if hypothetically DeMarcado is a healthy scratch for week 7, okay? Keontae Ingram available in 90% of sleeper leagues and 90% of ESPN leagues and 61% of sleeper leagues. And Damian Williams available in nearly 100% of both sleeper and ESPN leagues. So once again, what do you need this week? I think is a bigger question when it comes down to your waiver wire priority. My next waiver wire priority that you should be picking up going into week 7, which I'm surprisingly saying I thought he would have been rostered a lot more in both ESPN and sleeper leagues, and that is Kareem Hunt. Currently available in 73% of ESPN and 55% of sleeper leagues. And if you need a running back and you're telling yourself and you're looking at your waiver wires and saying Kareem Hunt's there, especially with the workload that he got this past week, that's exactly who I'm going to be prioritizing, because I can easily see this backfield 60-40 type of split, maybe 50-50 depending on the game script. We saw this game a crazy upset against the San Francisco 49ers with PJ Walker under center. was absolutely crazy. But what's good about this week is that Kareem Hunt did find the end zone, had 12 carries, 47 yards, caught the ball 3 out of 3 in the air for 24 yards, over 16 fantasy points, and that's exactly what you want and need. And you were worried about Jerome Ford. They both had good opportunities. Jerome Ford, 17 attempts, 84 yards. He also got work in the air. So both of these guys looks like it's a 60-40, or once again 50-50, depending on the game scripts. And Kareem Hunt, once again, available over in 73% of ESPN leagues and over 50% of sleeper leagues. If you need a running back at the moment, Kareem Hunt does have a phenomenal opportunity coming in, especially against the Indianapolis Colts here, especially if Deshaun Watson is ready and trending to play going into week 7. They can really go away with this game and then also be running the ball early and often if you need a running back. So once again, if you need a running back, Kareem Hunt available in a good amount of sleeper and ESPN leagues. All right, my next waiver wire priority is still another running back, and surprisingly, that is Devin Singletary, available in over 70% of ESPN leagues and just under 80% of sleeper leagues. And what's exciting about Devin Singletary, and really kind of disappointing if you're a Dameon Pierce owner, is the snap percentages and snap opportunities that he got in week 6. It looks like this team wanted to go into a different route in the backfield this week, and Devin Singletary looked like he fits this offense significantly better with CJ Stroud under helm. Devin Singletary, 34 snaps versus Dameon Pierce, 21. That is 13 more snaps on the field than Dameon Pierce, which is very concerning if you are a Dameon Pierce owner, specifically and also in fantasy. Routes run 18 versus 7, nearly more than double. More targets for Devin Singletary, and had 12 versus 13 Dameon Pierce carries on the ground. That is pretty significant. And when I was watching this game, which I definitely was, because I do have a lot of CJ Stroud and I believe in his CJ Stroud, when you think of who looks more explosive, who looks better in this offense, it is Devin Singletary. He looks like he fits, like I kind of mentioned it earlier. He looks more explosive. It looks like he fits this offense better versus than Dameon Pierce. With the way CJ Stroud is operating under helm, he is moving the ball, and what he needs is a more of a jittery back than more of a pounder type of running back, right? I think that's the type of things that you see with the Josh Allens, with the Patrick Mahomes, with these mobile quarterbacks. You don't need a first and second down guy, third down guy like a Dameon Pierce, a short yardage guy. No, because you have a superstar quarterback. It's crazy to say, I do believe CJ Stroud is a superstar in 6 weeks of his rookie season. He is going to be that in his career, in my opinion, that you could just need a scat back like a Devin Singletary, like a James Cook, like a Jet McKinnon. That's the type of offense they're going to be running at Houston, and this is exactly why Devin Singletary could easily be seeing the opportunities and taking the opportunities away from Dameon Pierce, right? Once again, 12 carries, 58 yards on the ground, nearly averaging 5 yards per carry, over 7 fantasy points on the ground. But when you look at Dameon Pierce, 13 carries, 34 yards, averaging less than 3 yards per carry. Dameon Pierce had multiple opportunities to get this ball in the end zone. They were on the goal line. It was on the 5-yard line, and they ran the ball 3 times, didn't get it. That's the third time I think they go for on 4th down. Then they get a flag as a brand new set of downs, and he still doesn't get it. And you see the frustration on CJ Stroud's face, on Dameon Pierce's face, and D'Amico Ryan's, the head coach's face, and they turn to CJ Stroud to throw the ball, which resulted in a touchdown from CJ Stroud, which was frustrating for this offense when you think of a fantasy perspective for Dameon Pierce, which means Devin Singletary is probably the better fit, once again, for this offense. Available in over 70% of both ESPN and sleeper leagues. If you need a running back, even though he's on a bye coming into this week, he is worth picking up and stashing when it comes down to when these guys are struggling in the later games. So Devin Singletary is worth a pickup. All right, my last running back group that you should be prioritizing coming into this week is a backup for Kyren Williams. Once again, both guys, Ronnie River and Zach Evans. Look, this is significant because even though Sean McVay kind of downplayed Kyren Williams' ankle injury, he said he just tweaked it. is he going to be ready for next week? And if he's not, they're going to have to result in going into another running back like a Ronnie Rivers or a Zach Evans. And who is going to be available and who is going to be the guy for this offense? Kind of very similar to, Keontae Ingram and Damian Williams or Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason. We don't know. And hopefully you pick up the right one when it comes down to it. I do believe the way that I saw in the recap and the way, I saw this offense kind of operating, it looks like it might be a 50-50 split backfield if Kyren Williams is going to miss time. I think you just have to result in who is going to be getting the ball in the air. At the moment, Zach Evans didn't get a pass catching opportunity this game, but Ronnie did. So I don't know if you want to really look into that, because Zach Evans does, coming out of college, he was a good pass catching back. We just haven't seen it yet in the NFL. Maybe this could be the perfect opportunity if you are a Zach Evans believer. But look, I'll keep this short and sweet. Both of these guys are available in over 98% of both ESPN and sleeper leagues. If you do need a running back, if you are a Kyren Williams owner, one of these guys needs to be picked up. One of these guys are going to be, his backup. We just don't know who is going to be. I can only go based off of the snap counts and the opportunities. Ronnie had 4 opportunities in this game, 3 on the ground, 1 in the air. Zach Evans, only 4 on the ground, none in the air. The reason for that really being is because Kyren Williams got injured late in the game. So they really didn't have to prioritize the run game whatsoever and then really switch it up. So we're not really going to see and understand who is this going to be if Kyren Williams misses time into later in the week. So keep that in mind. I would really prioritize Ronnie Rivers because he was the first guy that stepped in when Kyren Williams got injured. So keep that in mind. Ronnie Rivers and Zach Evans should definitely be picked up coming into this week. All right, going into my next priority here. If you do need a quarterback streamer, as we have been dealing with multiple quarterback injuries, Sam Howell is a perfect waiver wire streamer coming into week 7. Available in 81% of ESPN leagues and 60% of sleeper leagues. Currently averaging over 19 fantasy points per game. He hasn't scored less than 18 fantasy points outside of one game, which was in week 3 against Buffalo, which we all know how bad that game was, but has been scoring over 18 fantasy points in every single game. This past week, scoring 24 fantasy points. In the week before against Chicago, over 30 fantasy points. And if you do need a quarterback streamer, this is a perfect opportunity because you have the Giants, my beloved Giants, right, who has been bad against the defense. The Philadelphia Eagles, who just lost to Zach Wilson and the Jets. Then he goes to New England, who also been struggling. Then Seattle, who also gives up a lot of fantasy points to the wide receiver and quarterback position. And then again with my beloved New York Football Giants. Sam Howell has been playing great. He's been doing great things, and he has been spreading the ball to people that we are frustrated that is not named Jahan Dotson or Terry McLaurin. Is just Curtis Samuel, it feels like, which is frustrating if you're a Jahan Dotson owner. But Sam Howell has been slinging the ball. He looks like he could definitely be a guy with another year under his belt in this offense. Sam Howell, if you do need a quarterback streamer, he is worth picking up and starting, as there are so many injuries at the quarterback position going into week 7. All right, my next waiver wire priority, going into my wide receiver group, the starter of my wide receiver groups here. I brought him last week, but I do believe he should be prioritized again coming into this week, and that is Josh Downs, available in 69% of ESPN leagues and 50% of sleeper leagues. And this kind of echoing what I said last week, the way Josh Downs looks with Gardner Minshew is significantly better, especially with the news that we just heard earlier in the day on Sunday saying, hey, Anthony Richardson highly considering season-ending shoulder surgery, which means that Gardner Minshew could be the guy for the remainder of the season. And we have been seeing how good Josh Downs has been with Gardner Minshew. We all know the Minshew mania. Any given week that can happen, and that can be Josh Downs on the receiving end. Caught 5 out of 8 targets, a touchdown, over 13 fantasy points this week. Now, they did struggle on offense, as the Jags, a divisional matchup, really had their number this week, but definitely has some tougher matchups, but opportunities where we're going to have to see Josh Downs really, really improve. Cleveland, New Orleans, Carolina, New England, again. So he may not have the best matchup next week to where he can be a starter, but down the road, as they get comfortable, more and more comfortable, Gardner Minshew and Josh Downs, you can see both of these guys really, really averaging, or I would say for Josh Downs specifically, over 10 points per game for someone that needs a flex and maybe struggling with injuries at the wide receiver position or even bye week specifically, like going into week 7. So Josh Downs, once again, available in over 60% of ESPN leagues and 50% of sleeper leagues. All right, our next wide receiver on this list going into week 7 that you should be picking up, and that is Wan'Dale Robinson. Available in 90% of ESPN leagues and 71% of sleeper leagues. Wan'Dale Robinson this past week against the Buffalo Bills led this team in targets, as we saw his highest outing since that Lions game of last year where he tore his ACL, coming in doing some great things. Caught 8 out of 8 targets for 62 yards, over 14 fantasy points. He is clearly turning into the #1 wide receiver with Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor. So it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Both of these guys are going to be, or not both of these guys, but Wan'Dale's going to be seeing targets from both of these quarterbacks, whoever is in the game. And this offense only gets better as Saquon is in the game. As you saw on Sunday night, when Saquon's in the game, they have more opportunities to throw the ball. And yes, I know this offensive line is terrible, but they will get better later on in the season, which really can bring a good flex option if you do pick up Wan'Dale. Once again, if you are struggling with injuries and or bye weeks later on in the season. So if you do need a good wide receiver flex that can get you 10 plus points, Wan'Dale Robinson should definitely be picked up. All right, and my last waiver wire priority coming into week 7 at the tight end position is a rookie tight end, and that is Michael Mayer, available in 99% of ESPN leagues, 88% of sleeper leagues. And a lot of people said his coming out game was last week, but I do believe it was this week. Caught 5 out of 6 targets, 75 yards, over 12 fantasy points. And if you are struggling at the tight end position, if you are struggling with bye weeks, with injuries, whatever the case may be, underperforming tight ends, Michael Mayer looks like he's starting to come out here with Jimmy G and Brian Hoyer. So if you are worried about who's the quarterback going to be, what is going to look like, we saw a glimpse of a little bit last week with Jimmy G, and we saw a lot of it this week with Brian Hoyer. And if Jimmy G is going to be missing a significant amount of time, then Michael Mayer is going to be somebody that we can potentially lean on when you think of quarterback plays. Quarterback plays, especially backup quarterbacks, love to lean on the tight end position, and Michael Mayer is that perfect big body tight end that could be sitting in the middle of the fields for Brian Hoyer coming into coming week. So if you do need a tight end, Michael Mayer is my last waiver wire priority. All right, a little bit of a bonus names here for you. These are players that didn't make the list that I think a lot of people would like to have conversations about. I don't really have them high on my priority. Specifically, someone like a Craig Reynolds. I know a lot of people saying, well, Monty went down. What's going to happen with Jahmyr Gibbs if he does come back? And I think that's the biggest caveat. What's going to happen with Jahmyr Gibbs? How much fab do I truly want to spend on Craig Reynolds when if Jahmyr Gibbs does come back, he is going to be leading in this backfield? We also need to understand what is the severity of David Montgomery's injury. But the thing that I really want to focus on is what did Craig Reynolds do when Monty missed those games early in the year? He did miss week 3 against the Atlanta Falcons, which we saw Craig Reynolds kind of step up in and really take opportunity away from him. Specifically, Jahmyr Gibbs, and you know what the opportunities he took away from him was? 4 carries on the ground. That was his opportunities that he took away from Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs, arguably his second, well, it was his second best game against the Atlanta Falcons, where he had 17 carries for 80 yards that game. If Jahmyr Gibbs is healthy coming into week 7, I don't want to spend any or at all fab on Craig Reynolds going into week 7. Now, we could have a different conversation if Monty is hypothetically going to go on IR. Do they bring in somebody else or do they rock with Craig Reynolds? I'm not necessarily sure. We would definitely have to have a deeper conversation on our live stream, so definitely come through on that. And then another group of players that I want to bring, since the running back position has been so decimated this year, if your handcuff is on the waiver wire right now, go pick him up. do everything you can to pick him up. If you have a Travis Etienne, get a Tank Bigsby. If you have a Monty, get a Jahmyr Gibbs. If you have Joe Mixon, pick up a Chase Brown. Whatever the case may be, get your running backs handcuffed because of how quickly things can change. Now, the handcuffs haven't been doing so well. Some of them have been doing great and have been so far league winners. Some of them have been doing terrible. But if you are worried about your running backs going down, just pick up their handcuff and maybe you don't have to worry about them moving forward. And the two other players I do want to talk about are the quarterbacks. And Brian Hoyer, let's start off with him. What is going to happen with Jimmy G? What is this going to look like? It looks like he is going to be the guy moving forward. I know Aiden O'Connell is still there, but Aiden O'Connell wasn't active, right? He was inactive for this game. I wonder why that was the case, but they ran with Brian Hoyer. He did a decent job and they got away with the W. So where in the other game with Aiden O'Connell, he didn't have the win. So I'm not necessarily sure if I'm wanting to spend any fan on Brian Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell. Just depends on how long Jimmy G goes out and what those reports look like if they want to rock with Aiden O'Connell, the rookie. And the next guy, Justin Fields, dislocated his thumb. He has to have an MRI if there's maybe any torn ligaments or whatever the case may be. Tyson Baguette is going to be the next guy up. If Justin Fields missed time, we saw what he did this game. 14 attempts, 10 completions, 83 yards. He did have a rushing touchdown. He looked competent. He definitely struggled, but he looks like someone that can compete and bring some fire to this offense. And they kept him because they liked what they did with his Justin Fields type of role, right? I mean, he is not Justin Fields where he can run and scramble and make people miss. No, but he is somebody that can do a little bit of that. I'm not saying he is, once again, Justin Fields, but I think we should definitely be keeping an eye on Justin Fields. And if he's going to be missing some time, maybe does he go on IR? Does he miss 2 or 3 games? Are you in a super flex league, a 1 quarterback league? Those are all the questions that you need to ask yourself to say, should I be prioritizing some of these guys? That's why these guys didn't make my list. But anyways, guys, hopefully that is helpful. I am struggling in a lot of my leagues with injuries. I am right there with you. In some leagues, I am killing it, 5-1, or 6-1, whatever, 6-0, whatever the case may be. I'm above 500. And there's other leagues where every single person is injured, every single person's on bye week, and I'm just chalking this week. Hopefully you can make it through week 7. Please drop any questions, comments, or concerns that you have regarding week 7, and we will go and try our best going through every single question in our comments. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. And as always, flockfantasy.com/slam, the best place to support what Zach and I are doing here. Over 300 plus players that Zach ranks each and every week to start and sit in every single position that you need. So once again, flockfantasy.com, the best place to support what we're doing here. And as always, it's all love.
Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.